Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that a prospective student applying for admission to Alma Mater Europaea has expressed significant anxiety about the upcoming entrance examination and has inquired about how to best prepare, specifically asking if there are any particular areas or question types that are emphasized more than others. The admissions officer is aware of the general syllabus, but is concerned about providing information that could be perceived as preferential treatment or compromise the integrity of the examination process. Which of the following approaches best adheres to the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for university admissions? Option A. Advise the candidate to thoroughly review the official syllabus and recommended reading materials provided by Alma Mater Europaea, emphasizing that the examination is designed to assess a broad understanding of the subject matter as outlined, and suggest general study strategies applicable to academic assessments. Option B. Provide the candidate with a list of specific questions that are likely to appear on the examination, based on past papers or internal knowledge. Option C. Recommend that the candidate focus their preparation exclusively on a few key topics that have historically been heavily weighted in the examination, even if these are not explicitly highlighted as such in the syllabus. Option D. Suggest that the candidate engage a private tutor who claims to have a proven track record of helping students gain admission to Alma Mater Europaea through specialized preparation techniques. The correct answer is A. Advise the candidate to thoroughly review the official syllabus and recommended reading materials provided by Alma Mater Europaea, emphasizing that the examination is designed to assess a broad understanding of the subject matter as outlined, and suggest general study strategies applicable to academic assessments. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires navigating the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic admissions while upholding the integrity of the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance examination process. The core challenge lies in balancing the desire to support a promising candidate with the absolute necessity of adhering to established admission criteria and preventing any perception of unfair advantage or compromise of academic standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any support offered is within the bounds of Alma Mater Europaea's stated admission policies and ethical guidelines. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's application against the published entrance examination criteria and Alma Mater Europaea's admission regulations. This approach is right because it prioritizes transparency, fairness, and adherence to the established academic framework. Specifically, it aligns with the regulatory requirement to assess all candidates based on the same objective standards, ensuring the integrity of the entrance examination. This upholds the principle of equal opportunity and prevents any undue influence or preferential treatment, which could undermine the credibility of the university's admissions process. An incorrect approach that involves providing the candidate with advance information about the specific questions or topics to be covered in the entrance examination is a direct violation of academic integrity and examination regulations. This constitutes a breach of fairness and creates an unfair advantage for the candidate, compromising the validity of the assessment. Another incorrect approach, such as suggesting the candidate focus solely on a narrow set of topics without regard for the broader curriculum outlined in the examination syllabus, is also professionally unacceptable. While seemingly less direct than providing specific questions, it still manipulates the preparation process and deviates from the intended comprehensive assessment of the candidate's knowledge and aptitude as defined by the examination scope. This undermines the purpose of the entrance exam as a holistic evaluation tool. A further incorrect approach, which is to recommend that the candidate seek external tutoring that specializes in guaranteed success in the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam, is problematic. This implies that success can be manufactured through specific, potentially undisclosed, methods rather than through genuine academic merit and preparation, aligned with the university's stated requirements. It risks promoting a transactional view of admissions and could lead to candidates being ill-prepared for the actual rigors of the program if their success is based on external shortcuts rather than a deep understanding of the subject matter. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies, ethical codes, and examination regulations. When faced with a request that could potentially compromise these standards, a professional should 1. Consult the official documentation to understand the permissible boundaries. 2. Prioritize fairness and transparency in all interactions. 3. Seek guidance from superiors or relevant committees if the situation is ambiguous or presents an ethical dilemma. 4. Ensure that any advice or support provided is consistent with the established academic and regulatory framework, focusing on guiding the candidate towards legitimate preparation methods rather than offering shortcuts or unfair advantages. Question 2. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a candidate during the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam encounters an instruction that is ambiguous and could be interpreted in multiple ways. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and ethically sound response according to the university's examination guidelines? Option A. Discreetly ask a fellow candidate for their understanding of the instruction. Option B. Immediately and politely raise a hand to seek clarification from the invigilator. Option C. Ignore the ambiguous instruction and focus on the parts of the exam that are clear. Option D. Attempt to infer the meaning of the instruction based on general academic knowledge and proceed. Correct answer is A. Discreetly ask a fellow candidate for their understanding of the instruction. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the fundamental principles of academic integrity and ethical conduct expected of students at Alma Mater Europaea, particularly in the context of an entrance examination. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate and ethically sound method for seeking clarification on exam instructions, balancing the need for understanding with the imperative to avoid any form of academic misconduct. The correct approach involves seeking clarification directly from the invigilator or examination board through designated channels. This is the most appropriate method because it adheres strictly to the established examination protocols and upholds the principles of fairness and equal opportunity for all candidates. By engaging with the official authority responsible for administering the exam, the applicant ensures that any information received is accurate, official, and applicable to all participants. This aligns with the regulatory framework of academic institutions, which emphasizes transparency, adherence to rules, and the prevention of unfair advantages. An incorrect approach that involves consulting other candidates for clarification is professionally unacceptable. This fails to recognize the invigilator as the sole authority for exam-related queries and introduces the risk of receiving inaccurate or misleading information. It also creates a potential for collusion or the appearance of collusion, which is a serious breach of academic integrity. Furthermore, relying on peers bypasses the established channels for communication, undermining the structured and controlled environment essential for a fair examination. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to infer the meaning of unclear instructions based on prior knowledge or assumptions, is also professionally unsound. While a strong academic background is valuable, it should not be used to override or interpret official instructions without confirmation. This can lead to misinterpretations and errors, potentially resulting in a lower score or even disqualification if the inferred meaning deviates significantly from the intended instructions. It demonstrates a lack of diligence in seeking proper guidance and an over-reliance on personal judgment in a situation requiring strict adherence to external rules. Finally, an incorrect approach of ignoring the unclear instruction and proceeding with the exam without seeking clarification is professionally detrimental. This demonstrates a passive approach to problem solving and a failure to proactively address potential issues that could impact performance. It also suggests a lack of attention to detail and a disregard for the importance of understanding all aspects of the examination requirements. The professional decision-making process in such situations should always prioritize seeking clear, official guidance from the designated authority before proceeding, thereby ensuring compliance, fairness, and the integrity of the examination process. Question 3. When evaluating an applicant's submission for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam, and the applicant has significant volunteer experience that does not neatly fit into predefined categories on the application form, what is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to ensure regulatory compliance and fair assessment? Option A. Admissions committee should disregard the volunteer experience as it does not conform to the structured format of the application to maintain consistency in evaluation. Option B. The admissions committee should assume the volunteer experience is of minimal academic relevance and proceed with the evaluation without further inquiry. Option C. The admissions committee should request the applicant to provide a detailed description of the volunteer work, including its nature, duration, and any demonstrable impact, and then assess its relevance based on the university's stated admission criteria for extracurricular activities. Option D. The admissions committee should assign a default low score to the volunteer experience to avoid potential bias or overestimation of its value. The correct answer is C. The admissions committee should request the applicant to provide a detailed description of the volunteer work, including its nature, duration, and any demonstrable impact, and then assess its relevance based on the university's stated admission criteria for extracurricular activities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their academic achievements accurately and the university's regulatory framework governing admissions. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for misrepresentation, which can have serious consequences for both the applicant and the institution. Adhering strictly to the Alma Mater Europaea stated admission guidelines is paramount to maintaining the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring fair evaluation of all candidates. The correct approach involves the applicant proactively seeking clarification from the Alma Mater Europaea admissions office regarding the specific requirements for reporting extracurricular achievements, particularly those that may not fit neatly into standard categories. This demonstrates a commitment to transparency and adherence to the university's established procedures. The regulatory justification lies in the principle of truthful and accurate representation of qualifications, as mandated by the university's admission policies. Ethical considerations also support this approach, as it avoids any potential for misleading the admissions committee and upholds academic honesty. An incorrect approach would be to unilaterally decide how to categorize and present the volunteer work without consulting the university's guidelines. This could lead to misinterpretation of the applicant's experience or a violation of the university's reporting standards. Ethically, this approach risks misrepresentation, even if unintentional, by failing to follow established protocols. Another incorrect approach would be to omit the volunteer work entirely, fearing it might not be perceived favorably. This fails to provide a complete picture of the applicant's profile and potentially deprives the admissions committee of valuable information that could support their application, while also not adhering to the spirit of providing all relevant information. A further incorrect approach would be to inflate the significance or duration of the volunteer work to make it appear more substantial than it was. This constitutes direct misrepresentation and is a severe ethical and regulatory violation, undermining the trust essential in academic admissions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding and adhering to the specific regulatory requirements of the institution. This involves thorough research of official guidelines, proactive communication with the relevant departments when ambiguity exists, and a commitment to honest and accurate self-representation. When faced with uncertainty, seeking clarification is always the most prudent and ethically sound course of action. Question 4. The evaluation methodology shows a strong emphasis on an applicant's demonstrated understanding and alignment with Alma Mater Europaea's specific admission criteria and ethical framework, which approach best reflects a candidate's preparedness for this entrance exam. Option A. Submitting a portfolio of work that showcases general intellectual curiosity and problem-solving skills, without explicit reference to the university's specific admission guidelines. Option B. Highlighting specific projects and experiences that directly illustrate the applicant's grasp of Alma Mater Europaea's stated values and how these align with the program's objectives, referencing the exam's regulatory framework. Option C. Providing a detailed personal statement that discusses the applicant's long-term career aspirations and general contributions to society, independent of the exam's specific evaluation methodology. Option D. Presenting a comprehensive curriculum vitae, detailing extensive academic achievements and extracurricular activities from various international institutions. The correct answer is D. Presenting a comprehensive curriculum vitae detailing extensive academic achievements and extracurricular activities from various international institutions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the Alma Mater Europaea's specific admission regulations and ethical standards, rather than general academic merit. The challenge lies in identifying the approach that most accurately reflects adherence to these particular institutional requirements, which are paramount for successful entry. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between approaches that merely present qualifications and those that explicitly align with the stated evaluation methodology. The correct approach involves directly addressing the stated evaluation methodology by highlighting how the applicant's profile and experiences align with the specific criteria and values emphasized by Alma Mater Europaea. This demonstrates a proactive understanding of the institution's priorities and a tailored application strategy. Regulatory justification stems from the exam's explicit instruction to adhere only to the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam framework. Ethical justification lies in demonstrating genuine interest and preparedness for the specific program by engaging with its stated admission criteria. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on a broad range of academic achievements without referencing the specific evaluation methodology fails to acknowledge the exam's jurisdictional constraints. This is an ethical failure as it suggests a lack of attention to the explicit instructions and an attempt to bypass the defined assessment process. Another incorrect approach that emphasizes generic strengths or skills without connecting them to the Alma Mater Europaea's stated requirements ignores the core of the evaluation. This is a regulatory failure because it deviates from the specified framework, and an ethical failure as it implies a superficial engagement with the application process. An approach that introduces external or irrelevant information, even if impressive in another context, is also incorrect. This is a regulatory failure because it violates the strict jurisdiction requirement, and an ethical failure as it demonstrates a disregard for the exam's specific parameters. Professionals should approach such situations by meticulously dissecting the provided regulatory framework and guidelines. They must identify the core objectives and specific requirements of the assessment. The decision-making process involves prioritizing adherence to the defined jurisdiction above all else, then tailoring responses to directly address the stated evaluation criteria, and finally, ensuring all presented information is relevant and aligned with the institution's stated values and expectations. Question 5. Analysis of the primary regulatory documents that an admissions committee member at Alma Mater Europaea should consult to determine the eligibility criteria and the procedural requirements for applicants to the upcoming academic year's entrance exam. Option A. The Alma Mater Europaea admissions policy and the relevant sections of its statutes. Option B. General principles of higher education admissions and the admission policies of comparable European universities. Option C. Informal discussions with current faculty members and anecdotal evidence of past admission cycles. Option D. The Bologna process framework and general guidelines for academic accreditation in the European Union. Correct answer is A. The Alma Mater Europaea admissions policy and the relevant sections of its statutes. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in understanding and applying the specific regulatory framework governing academic admissions for Alma Mater Europaea. The core difficulty lies in discerning which official documents and guidelines are authoritative for determining eligibility and the subsequent admission process. Misinterpreting or overlooking these primary sources can lead to incorrect assessments of applicants, potentially causing procedural errors, unfair treatment, and reputational damage to the institution. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of the Alma Mater Europaea's official admissions policy and the relevant sections of its statutes. These documents are the definitive regulatory framework for entrance exams. Adhering to these specific institutional regulations ensures that all admissions decisions are made in accordance with established procedures, fairness, and legal compliance as defined by the university itself. This demonstrates a commitment to regulatory adherence and ethical admissions practices. An incorrect approach would be to rely on general university admission principles or the admission policies of other institutions. This fails to acknowledge the unique regulatory environment of Alma Mater Europaea. Relying on general principles lacks the specificity required for accurate application, and referencing other institutions' policies directly violates the principle of jurisdictional compliance, as it introduces external, potentially conflicting, regulatory standards. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize informal advice or past practices that are not codified in the official policy. This introduces subjectivity and a lack of transparency, undermining the integrity of the admissions process and potentially contravening explicit regulatory requirements. Professionals tasked with admissions should adopt a systematic decision-making process. This begins with identifying the precise regulatory documents governing the situation. Next, a thorough understanding of the content of these documents is essential. When faced with ambiguity, seeking clarification from the designated academic or administrative authority within Alma Mater Europaea is crucial. Finally, all decisions must be demonstrably traceable to the established regulatory framework, ensuring accountability and compliance. Question 6. The audit findings indicate a pattern of minor discrepancies in the submitted academic transcripts for several applicants to the Alma Mater Europaea's master's programs. Specifically, there are inconsistencies in the grading scale interpretation and the calculation of the grade point average, GPA, compared to the university's stated requirements. As a member of the admissions committee, how should you proceed to ensure regulatory compliance and uphold the integrity of the admissions process? Option A. Initiate a thorough review of each affected application, cross-referencing the submitted transcripts with the applicant's stated qualifications and the university's official grading conversion guidelines, and request clarification from applicants for any significant deviations before making a final decision. Option B. Immediately reject all applications with transcript discrepancies, regardless of their nature or potential for clarification, to maintain a strict adherence to the initial submission requirements. Option C. Attempt to adjust the GPA calculations for the affected applicants to align with the university's requirements, even if it means making assumptions about their original grading system, to ensure their applications appear compliant. Option D. Overlook the minor discrepancies in the GPA calculations, assuming they are unintentional errors, and proceed with the admissions decisions based on the overall strength of the applicant's profile and recommendations. Correct answer is A. Initiate a thorough review of each affected application, cross-referencing the submitted transcripts with the applicant's stated qualifications and the university's official grading conversion guidelines, and request clarification from applicants for any significant deviations before making a final decision. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires navigating the delicate balance between academic integrity, institutional reputation, and the ethical obligations of an admissions committee member. The pressure to admit qualified candidates, coupled with the potential for bias, necessitates a rigorous and objective review process. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that all admissions decisions are based solely on the established criteria and are free from undue influence or preferential treatment, thereby upholding the fairness and credibility of the Alma Mater Europaea's admissions process. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of all application materials against the published admission criteria, with a specific focus on identifying any discrepancies or potential misrepresentations. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with regulatory expectations for fair and transparent admissions processes. It prioritizes objective evidence and adherence to established guidelines, ensuring that decisions are defensible and equitable. This method directly addresses the audit findings by demonstrating a commitment to due diligence and a systematic evaluation of each candidate's qualifications. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking the identified discrepancies due to the candidate's perceived potential or connections would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This would constitute preferential treatment, undermining the principle of equal opportunity and potentially violating institutional policies on admissions. It introduces bias and compromises the integrity of the entire admissions process, making it susceptible to challenges and damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately dismiss the candidate based on the audit findings without further investigation, might also be problematic. While addressing discrepancies is crucial, a hasty dismissal without allowing for clarification or explanation could be seen as unfair, especially if the discrepancies are minor or easily rectifiable. This approach lacks the nuanced judgment required in admissions and could lead to the rejection of a deserving candidate. A further incorrect approach, such as attempting to retroactively justify the discrepancies to fit the candidate's profile, represents a clear attempt to manipulate data and circumvent established procedures. This is a serious breach of academic integrity and ethical conduct, as it involves falsifying information or misrepresenting facts to achieve a desired outcome. Such an action would not only be a regulatory violation, but also a profound ethical lapse, eroding trust in the admissions committee and the institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to transparency, fairness, and adherence to established policies. When audit findings or other concerns arise, the first step is to gather all relevant information and understand the nature of the issue. This is followed by a systematic evaluation against the defined criteria, seeking clarification where necessary, and documenting all steps taken. If discrepancies are found, the process should allow for the candidate to provide explanations or corrections, while maintaining an objective assessment of the overall application. Ultimately, decisions must be based on evidence and consistent application of admission standards, ensuring that the process is both rigorous and equitable. Question 7. Process analysis reveals that an applicant for the Alma Mater Europaea's master's program in international relations has submitted a transcript showing a strong academic record in their undergraduate studies, but they lack one specific elective course that is listed as a recommended prerequisite. The applicant has provided a detailed letter explaining their academic trajectory and highlighting relevant work experience that they believe compensates for the missing course. How should the admissions committee proceed according to Alma Mater Europaea's entrance exam guidelines? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire application, including their explanation and work experience, to assess their overall suitability and potential for success in the program, considering whether their existing qualifications demonstrate equivalent knowledge or skills. Option B. Grant an exception to the prerequisite based on the applicant's strong overall academic record without further investigation. Option C. Immediately reject the application due to the unmet prerequisite, as per the stated requirements. Option D. Seek informal advice from a senior faculty member in the International Relations Department to gauge their opinion on the applicant's chances before formally reviewing the file. The correct answer is C. Immediately reject the application due to the unmet prerequisite, as per the stated requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in academic admissions where an applicant's qualifications, while strong in some areas, may not perfectly align with all stated entry requirements. The challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to academic standards with the desire to attract diverse and promising talent. Admissions officers must exercise careful judgment to assess the holistic profile of an applicant, considering potential equivalencies and mitigating factors, while strictly adhering to the Alma Mater Europaea's established admission policies and guidelines. The risk of inconsistency or perceived bias in decision-making is a significant professional concern. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's entire application, including any supplementary materials provided to explain potential discrepancies. This approach is justified by the Alma Mater Europaea's admission framework, which likely allows for a degree of flexibility and holistic evaluation, provided that any deviations from standard requirements are well documented and demonstrably equivalent in academic rigor or potential. This ensures fairness and adherence to the spirit of the admission criteria, even when literal compliance is not met. The focus is on assessing the applicant's capacity to succeed in the program, rather than solely on ticking boxes. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that immediately rejects the applicant based solely on a minor deviation from a specific prerequisite, without considering the applicant's overall academic record or the context of their prior education, fails to uphold the principle of holistic review. This rigid interpretation may overlook a highly capable candidate and is contrary to a nuanced admissions process that seeks to identify potential. An approach that bypasses established admission committee procedures to grant an exception without proper justification or documentation is ethically problematic and undermines the integrity of the admissions process. This could lead to accusations of favoritism and a lack of transparency, violating principles of fairness and accountability. An approach that relies on informal discussions or personal opinions of faculty members outside of the official admissions process to influence the decision is also flawed. This circumvents the structured and documented decision-making framework designed to ensure objectivity and consistency, potentially introducing bias and compromising the fairness of the outcome. Professional reasoning. Professionals in admissions should adopt a systematic decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the Alma Mater Europaea's admission regulations and guidelines. When faced with an applicant who does not meet all stated requirements, the process should involve 1. A comprehensive review of the applicant's complete file, including any explanations for discrepancies. 2. An assessment of whether the applicant's existing qualifications demonstrate equivalent knowledge or skills. 3. Consultation with relevant academic departments or admissions committee members if clarification or expert opinion is needed. 4. A documented decision that clearly articulates the rationale, referencing specific admission policies and the evidence considered. This structured approach ensures fairness, transparency, and adherence to regulatory compliance. Question 8. Research into the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance examination regulations reveals an international applicant has submitted a transcript from an institution not explicitly listed in the university's recognized prior learning database. The applicant claims the institution is accredited in its home country and has provided a letter from its National Ministry of Education confirming its status. What is the most appropriate regulatory compliance approach? Option A. Reject the application immediately due to the institution not being in the recognized prior learning database, as per strict adherence to listed institutions. Option B. Initiate a formal verification process to assess the accreditation and equivalence of the applicant's prior institution and qualifications against Alma Mater Europaea standards, potentially involving consultation with academic departments and external accreditation bodies if necessary. Option C. Accept the applicant's documentation at face value, as the Ministry of Education letter serves as sufficient external validation of the institution's accreditation. Option D. Advise the applicant to reapply with documentation from an institution explicitly listed in the recognized prior learning database, without further investigation into the current submission. Correct answer is C. Accept the applicant's documentation at face value, as the Ministry of Education letter serves as sufficient external validation of the institution's accreditation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity and the need to provide clear, actionable guidance to prospective students. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance examination regulations in a way that is both compliant and helpful. A careful judgment is required to balance the strictness of regulatory adherence with the practicalities of admissions processes. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the Alma Mater Europaea's specific entrance examination regulations, particularly those pertaining to the eligibility criteria and the documentation required for international applicants. This approach prioritizes adherence to the letter and spirit of the regulations, ensuring that all decisions are based on established rules and are defensible. Specifically, it requires verifying that the applicant's prior educational qualifications are recognized and equivalent to the standards set by the university, and that all submitted documents meet the specified requirements for authenticity and completeness. This aligns with the regulatory framework by upholding the integrity of the admissions process and ensuring fair treatment of all candidates based on objective criteria. An incorrect approach that relies on informal communication or personal interpretation of the regulations is professionally unacceptable. This fails to uphold the regulatory framework by introducing subjectivity and potential bias into the admissions decision. It also risks misinforming the applicant, leading to potential appeals or challenges based on inconsistent application of rules. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes expediency over thorough verification, such as accepting incomplete documentation with the promise of later submission, directly violates the regulatory requirement for complete and verified application materials. This undermines the credibility of the admissions process and could lead to admitting unqualified candidates, thereby compromising the academic standards of the university. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of the relevant university regulations and guidelines. When faced with ambiguity, the professional should consult official documentation or seek clarification from the designated admissions committee or regulatory body within the university. The decision should always be grounded in documented policies and procedures, ensuring transparency and fairness. If an applicant's situation falls outside the standard criteria, a formal process for exceptions or appeals, as outlined in the regulations, should be followed, rather than making ad hoc decisions. Question 9. The performance metrics show a significant increase in applications for the Alma Mater Europaea's master's programs, with a notable surge in candidates from regions demonstrating high economic growth. considering the university's strategic goal to enhance its global standing and attract diverse talent, which approach to admissions evaluation best aligns with regulatory compliance and ethical best practices for Alma Mater Europaea? Option A. Focus solely on quantifiable metrics such as previous academic scores and standardized test results from applicants from high-growth regions, as these are the most objective indicators of potential. Option B. Adjust the minimum entry requirements for programs receiving a high volume of applications from these regions to accommodate a larger number of students, thereby increasing enrollment figures. Option C. Prioritize applications from the high-growth regions, assuming their economic context correlates with academic preparedness and future success, to meet enrollment targets and enhance global representation. Option D. Implement a holistic review process that evaluates all applications against the established academic and personal criteria outlined in the Alma Mater Europaea admissions guidelines, regardless of applicant origin or perceived economic context. The correct answer is C. Prioritize applications from the high-growth regions, assuming their economic context correlates with academic preparedness and future success, to meet enrollment targets and enhance global representation. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant increase in student applications for the Alma Mater Europaea's master's programs, particularly in fields with high projected employment demand. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the admissions committee to balance the university's strategic goals of attracting top talent and maintaining academic rigor with the ethical imperative of fair and transparent admissions processes. The pressure to meet enrollment targets, driven by performance metrics, could inadvertently lead to compromises in the evaluation of candidates, potentially impacting the long-term reputation and academic standing of the university. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of quantitative success does not overshadow qualitative assessment and adherence to established admission criteria. The correct approach involves a holistic review of applications, where performance metrics are considered alongside qualitative factors such as essays, letters of recommendation, and prior academic achievements, all within the established admission criteria and guidelines of Alma Mater Europaea. This approach is right because it upholds the principles of fairness and academic integrity. By adhering to the university's stated admission requirements and employing a balanced evaluation methodology, the committee ensures that all candidates are assessed equitably. This aligns with the ethical duty to select students who are most likely to succeed academically and contribute positively to the university community, thereby safeguarding the institution's reputation and the value of its degrees. An approach that prioritizes candidates solely based on a high score in a single performance metric, such as a standardized test, is ethically flawed. This fails to acknowledge the multifaceted nature of academic potential and can lead to the exclusion of highly capable students who may excel in other areas. It also risks creating a biased selection process, which is contrary to the principles of equal opportunity and fair assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to relax admission standards for certain programs to meet enrollment targets indicated by performance metrics. This directly violates the university's commitment to academic excellence and can dilute the quality of education and the reputation of the degrees awarded. It also creates an unfair advantage for less qualified candidates admitted under relaxed criteria, undermining the integrity of the admissions process. Finally, an approach that focuses exclusively on metrics that are easily quantifiable, while neglecting qualitative aspects of an application, is also problematic. This can lead to a narrow selection of students who may not possess the critical thinking, creativity, or leadership potential that are crucial for academic success and future professional contributions. It also fails to capture the full picture of a candidate's suitability for the program. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's mission, values, and admission policies. It requires a commitment to ethical conduct, including transparency, fairness, and impartiality. When faced with conflicting pressures, such as performance metrics versus academic standards, professionals must prioritize adherence to established guidelines and ethical principles. A structured review process, involving multiple evaluators and clear criteria, helps to mitigate bias and ensure a comprehensive assessment of each candidate. Regular review and recalibration of admission processes are also essential to ensure they remain aligned with the university's objectives and ethical obligations. Question 10. Comparative studies suggest that applicants to European universities often face ethical dilemmas regarding the originality of submitted application materials. An applicant has previously submitted a personal essay for a different university's application process. Now, applying to Alma Mater Europaea, the applicant feels this same essay is the most suitable to convey their motivations and qualifications. However, they are concerned about potential issues of originality and academic integrity. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible approach for this applicant to take? Option A. Submit the essay to Alma Mater Europaea without any mention of its prior submission, assuming the admissions committee will not detect the overlap. Option B. Contact the Alma Mater Europaea admissions office to explain the situation regarding the essay and inquire about the appropriate course of action. Option C. Withdraw the application to Alma Mater Europaea to avoid any potential complications related to the essay. Option D. Subtly rephrase significant portions of the essay to make it appear entirely new while retaining the core content and message. The correct answer is A. Submit the essay to Alma Mater Europaea without any mention of its prior submission, assuming the admissions committee will not detect the overlap. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles of academic integrity and ethical conduct, which are paramount in any higher education institution, including Alma Mater Europaea. The challenge lies in discerning between acceptable academic practices and those that constitute misconduct, even when the intent might not be malicious. Careful judgment is required to navigate the nuances of academic honesty. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent communication with the admissions office regarding the potential overlap in submitted materials. This demonstrates a commitment to honesty and adherence to academic integrity policies. Specifically, it aligns with the general principles of academic honesty expected by most universities, which emphasize originality and proper attribution. By informing the institution, the applicant allows Alma Mater Europaea to assess the situation fairly and in accordance with its own admission guidelines, which are designed to uphold the value of academic work. This approach prioritizes transparency and ethical disclosure, which are core tenets of academic and professional conduct. An incorrect approach that involves submitting the essay without any disclosure fails to uphold the principle of academic honesty. This omission can be interpreted as an attempt to mislead the admissions committee, even if unintentional. It violates the expectation of originality and can lead to accusations of plagiarism or academic misconduct, jeopardizing the application. Another incorrect approach, which is to withdraw the application entirely without explanation, avoids the immediate issue but does not address the underlying concern about academic integrity. While it prevents a potential negative outcome, it misses an opportunity to demonstrate ethical behavior and a commitment to rectifying potential issues. It does not reflect a proactive and responsible approach to academic challenges. A further incorrect approach, which is to alter the submitted essay slightly to make it appear entirely new, constitutes a form of deception. This misrepresentation directly violates the principles of academic honesty and integrity. It attempts to circumvent the rules rather than address the situation transparently, which is ethically unsound and professionally damaging. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to transparency and honesty. When faced with a potential conflict or overlap in submitted academic work, the first step should be to review the institution's specific academic integrity policies. If there is any doubt, proactive communication with the relevant department, in this case, the admissions office, is crucial. This involves clearly explaining the situation, providing relevant context, and seeking guidance on how to proceed. This approach prioritizes ethical conduct and allows the institution to make an informed decision based on accurate information. Question 11. System analysis indicates that an admissions committee member for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam has received an informal recommendation from a prominent alumnus regarding a particular candidate. The alumnus emphasizes the candidate's potential and connections rather than specific exam performance. The committee member is aware of the university's stated commitment to merit-based admissions as outlined in its internal guidelines for the entrance exam, which approach best upholds the regulatory framework and ethical standards for this entrance exam. Option A. The committee member should present the informal recommendation to the admissions committee, highlighting the alumnus's influence and suggesting a discussion on how to best accommodate the candidate's perceived strengths beyond the exam. Option B. The committee member should subtly factor in the alumnus's recommendation, considering the candidate's potential and connections as supplementary qualitative aspects to the objective exam scores. Option C. The committee member should inform the alumnus that, while the recommendation is noted, the admissions process is strictly governed by the entrance exam results and other official criteria, and that no special consideration can be given based on external endorsements. Option D. The committee member should disregard the informal recommendation entirely and proceed with evaluating the candidate solely based on their performance in the entrance exam and other officially recognized assessment components, as per the university's published admission criteria. The correct answer is D. The committee member should disregard the informal recommendation entirely and proceed with evaluating the candidate solely based on their performance in the entrance exam and other officially recognized assessment components, as per the university's published admission criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in navigating the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic admissions, specifically within the context of the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam. The core difficulty lies in balancing the university's stated commitment to meritocracy and fairness with the potential for external pressures or personal biases to influence the admissions process. A rigorous adherence to established procedures and a commitment to objective evaluation are paramount to maintaining the integrity of the entrance exam and the university's reputation. The correct approach involves a strict adherence to the Alma Mater Europaea's published admission criteria and the established examination protocols. This means evaluating all candidates solely on their performance in the entrance exam and any other officially sanctioned assessment components, without regard to external factors or personal relationships. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it upholds the principle of equal opportunity and ensures that admissions are based on demonstrated academic merit, as defined by the university's own framework. It prevents any appearance of impropriety or favoritism, which could undermine the credibility of the examination process and the institution. An incorrect approach would be to consider information not part of the official assessment, such as a candidate's family connections or perceived future potential outside of the exam's scope. This introduces subjectivity and bias, violating the principle of fair evaluation. Such an approach could lead to accusations of nepotism or unfair advantage, damaging the university's standing and potentially leading to regulatory scrutiny if the university's own admissions policies are found to have been circumvented. Another incorrect approach would be to deviate from the standardized scoring or evaluation methodology outlined in the exam guidelines, perhaps to accommodate a candidate perceived as close to the institution or to achieve a desired outcome. This undermines the validity of the entire examination process, as it suggests that the results are not a true reflection of a candidate's performance against a consistent standard. This failure to adhere to established procedures is a direct breach of regulatory compliance and ethical conduct in admissions. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, objectivity, and adherence to established rules. This involves clearly understanding the university's admissions policies, the specific requirements of the entrance exam, and maintaining a strict separation between personal opinions or external influences and the evaluation process. When faced with ambiguous situations or potential conflicts of interest, seeking guidance from established university committees or ethics officers is crucial to ensure compliance and maintain professional integrity. Question 12. Regulatory review indicates that the Alma Mater Europaea Admissions Committee is evaluating a candidate whose academic record is slightly below the stated minimum requirements for a highly competitive program, but whose extracurricular achievements and a compelling personal statement suggest significant potential. The committee is also aware that this candidate's family has a history of substantial philanthropic contributions to the university. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee to ensure compliance with regulatory and ethical standards? Option A. Prioritize the candidate's admission due to their family's philanthropic history, as this aligns with the university's strategic financial goals and can enhance its reputation. Option B. Focus primarily on the candidate's potential to contribute to the university's public profile and international standing, deeming their academic record less critical given their other strengths. Option C. Recommend the candidate for a less competitive program where their academic profile might be a better fit, without a comprehensive reevaluation of their suitability for the original program. Option D. Conduct a thorough holistic review of the candidate's entire application, including academic performance, extracurricular activities, personal statement, and any relevant program-specific criteria, while ensuring all decisions are documented and justifiable against published admission guidelines. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough holistic review of the candidate's entire application, including academic performance, extracurricular activities, personal statement, and any relevant program-specific criteria, while ensuring all decisions are documented and justifiable against published admission guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to admit qualified candidates. The admissions committee must navigate the Alma Mater Europaea's stated commitment to merit-based selection, while also considering the university's strategic goals, which might include diversity or specific program needs. The challenge lies in ensuring that any deviation from strict adherence to stated criteria is justifiable, transparent, and does not compromise the integrity of the admissions process or the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing interests ethically and in compliance with the university's internal regulations and any overarching educational accreditation standards. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's profile against all stated admission criteria, including academic achievements, extracurricular activities, and personal statements, while also considering any specific program requirements or university-wide admission policies. This approach prioritizes a holistic evaluation that is grounded in the university's published guidelines. The regulatory and ethical justification lies in upholding the principles of fairness, transparency, and equal opportunity. By adhering to established criteria and documented policies, the committee ensures that decisions are based on objective assessments and are defensible, thereby maintaining the credibility of the admissions process and the university. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the applicant's potential to contribute to the university's reputation, without a comprehensive review of their qualifications against stated criteria, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This approach risks introducing bias and undermining the meritocratic principles the university purports to uphold, could lead to the admission of less qualified candidates over more deserving ones, violating the principle of fairness. Another incorrect approach that involves prioritizing candidates based on their ability to secure external funding or donations, irrespective of their academic merit or fit for the program, is also professionally unacceptable. This introduces a conflict of interest and prioritizes financial considerations over educational suitability, which is a clear breach of ethical conduct and likely violates internal university policies on admissions and financial dealings. A third incorrect approach that involves making admission decisions based on informal recommendations or personal connections, without proper documentation or adherence to established procedures, is a failure of due process and transparency. This can lead to arbitrary decisions, favoritism, and a lack of accountability, all of which erode trust in the admission system and can have legal and reputational repercussions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured and documented approach. This includes 1. Clearly understanding and referencing all relevant university admission policies, program-specific requirements, and any applicable accreditation standards. 2. Conducting a comprehensive and objective evaluation of each applicant based on the established criteria. 3. Documenting the rationale for all admission decisions, especially for borderline cases or those requiring special consideration. 4. Seeking consensus within the admissions committee, and if necessary, escalating complex or contentious decisions to higher authorities within the university for review and approval. 5. Maintaining strict confidentiality and avoiding any appearance of impropriety or conflict of interest. Question 13. Consider a scenario where a prospective student whose parent is a significant donor to Alma Mater Europaea approaches you, an admissions committee member, requesting special consideration for their entrance exam application, implying that their family's contributions should be taken into account. According to the regulatory framework and guidelines for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Advise the student that their parents' donation status is a separate matter from the entrance exam and suggest they focus solely on their exam preparation without any further discussion. Option B. Acknowledge the family's contributions and subtly suggest that their support might be viewed favorably during the review process, without making explicit promises. Option C. Politely decline the request, reaffirming that all applications are evaluated solely on merit and adherence to examination protocols, and then formally report the interaction to the admissions committee chair as per university policy. Option D. Inform the prospective student that, while direct influence is not possible, you can ensure their application receives a more thorough review than others. The correct answer is C. Politely decline the request, reaffirming that all applications are evaluated solely on merit and adherence to examination protocols, and then formally report the interaction to the admissions committee chair as per university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity and the need to ensure fair and equitable admission processes. Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam regulations, while not explicitly detailed here, are presumed to uphold principles of meritocracy, transparency, and the prevention of undue influence. The challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to admitting qualified candidates with the ethical obligation to maintain the integrity of the examination process. A candidate's attempt to leverage personal connections for an advantage directly undermines these principles. The correct approach involves a strict adherence to the established examination protocols and a firm refusal to engage with any form of preferential treatment based on personal connections. This aligns with the presumed regulatory framework of the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam, which would prioritize objective assessment of a candidate's qualifications and potential. Ethically, this approach upholds fairness, equal opportunity, and the principle of merit. It prevents the introduction of bias and ensures that all candidates are evaluated solely on their academic performance and suitability for the program. An incorrect approach that involves considering the candidate's request due to their family's influence would be a direct violation of regulatory compliance. This would introduce an element of favoritism, compromising the integrity of the admission process, and potentially admitting a less qualified candidate over a more deserving one. Such an action would be ethically unsound, as it breaches the duty of impartiality and fairness owed to all applicants. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to subtly influence the examination process without explicit favoritism, is equally problematic. This could involve providing the candidate with advance information or preferential grading, which still constitutes a breach of integrity and fairness. It is an attempt to circumvent the established rules and would likely be considered a serious ethical lapse and a violation of any university's commitment to a transparent and objective admissions procedure. Finally, an approach that involves reporting the candidate's attempt to the examination board without taking any action to address the immediate situation would be incomplete. While reporting is a necessary step, it does not absolve the individual from the immediate responsibility of upholding the integrity of the process at the point of contact. A complete response requires both immediate adherence to protocol and subsequent reporting. The professional decision-making process in such situation should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical guidelines. Professionals must prioritize adherence to these regulations above personal relationships or perceived pressures. A systematic approach would involve 1. Recognizing the potential for undue influence. 2. Immediately reaffirming the established examination procedures and the principle of objective assessment. 3. Politely but firmly declining any request for preferential treatment. 4. Documenting the interaction and reporting it to the appropriate authority within the university as per established protocol. This ensures accountability and helps maintain the overall integrity of the admission process. Question 14. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of engagement for a prospective student that deviates significantly from the average for successful applicants, raising concerns about their suitability. However, the applicants' submitted academic transcripts and letters of recommendation are exceptionally strong. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of fair and comprehensive evaluation in academic admissions? Option A. Disregard the monitoring system's findings entirely, assuming it is flawed, and proceed with the admission based solely on the strong academic transcripts and recommendation letters. Option B. Attempt to adjust the interpretation of the monitoring system's data to align with the positive aspects of the applicant's profile, prioritizing the positive narrative. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire profile, integrating the monitoring system's data with their academic records and recommendation letters to form a holistic assessment, and if discrepancies remain, seek further clarification from the applicant or relevant parties. Option D. Immediately reject the applicant based on the negative indicators from the monitoring system, as it suggests a fundamental issue that overrides other qualifications. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire profile, integrating the monitoring system's data with their academic records and recommendation letters to form a holistic assessment, and if discrepancies remain, seek further clarification from the applicant or relevant parties. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for misinterpreting data from a monitoring system, which could lead to incorrect admissions decisions. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the interpretation and subsequent actions are aligned with the Alma Mater Europaea's stated admission policies and ethical guidelines for academic institutions. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine indicators of academic potential and superficial or misleading data points. The correct approach involves a holistic review of the applicant's profile, considering all available information in conjunction with the monitoring system's output. This approach aligns with the principle of fair and comprehensive evaluation, ensuring that no single data point, especially one derived from a system that may have limitations or biases, dictates the outcome. Alma Mater Europaea, like any reputable academic institution, is expected to uphold principles of fairness and due diligence in its admissions process. Relying on a nuanced interpretation of the monitoring system's findings, integrated with other qualitative and quantitative data, reflects a commitment to these principles. This method avoids over-reliance on potentially flawed automated assessments and prioritizes a well-rounded understanding of the applicant. An incorrect approach that solely relies on the monitoring system's output without further verification or contextualization fails to meet the standards of academic due diligence. Such an approach risks making admissions decisions based on incomplete or potentially biased information, which is ethically unsound and could violate the spirit of fair assessment. Another incorrect approach, which dismisses the monitoring system's findings entirely without investigation, is also problematic. This could lead to overlooking valuable insights that the system might genuinely provide, potentially resulting in missed opportunities to identify strong candidates or to identify potential issues that warrant further scrutiny. A third incorrect approach, which involves manipulating the system's output to fit a preconceived notion about an applicant, represents a severe ethical breach and undermines the integrity of the admissions process. This is a form of data manipulation that is unacceptable in any professional setting, particularly in academia, where objectivity and transparency are paramount. Professionals in academic admissions should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes critical evaluation of all data sources. This involves understanding the capabilities and limitations of any monitoring systems used, cross-referencing information from multiple sources, and applying established institutional policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with ambiguous data, the professional approach is to seek clarification, conduct further investigation, and make decisions based on a comprehensive and balanced assessment, rather than on isolated or unverified information. Question 15. The investigation demonstrates that Mr. Novik's submitted application for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam contains information regarding his prior academic achievements that appears to be inconsistent with the official transcripts provided. Which of the following actions best adheres to the principles of fair and transparent admissions processes within the regulatory framework governing university entrance examinations? Option A. Immediately reject Mr. Novik's application due to the apparent discrepancy in his academic records. Option B. Contact Mr. Novik informally via personal email to discuss the potential inconsistencies in his academic records. Option C. Formally notify Mr. Novik of the specific discrepancies identified and provide him with a defined period to submit a written explanation or supporting documentation before a final decision is made. Option D. Proceed with Mr. Novik's application without further inquiry, assuming the provided transcripts are accurate. Correct answer is A. Immediately reject Mr. Novak's application due to the apparent discrepancy in his academic records. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a prospective student, Mr. Novak, has provided information during his alma mater Europaea entrance exam application that appears to be inconsistent with his academic records. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair admissions processes with the need to treat applicants with respect and provide them with an opportunity to clarify any discrepancies. A hasty or accusatory approach could lead to an unfair rejection, while an overly lenient approach could compromise the integrity of the admissions process. Careful judgment is required to ensure a thorough and equitable review. The correct approach involves a structured and transparent process of seeking clarification from the applicant. This entails formally notifying Mr. Novak of the identified discrepancies, clearly outlining the specific areas of concern, and providing him with a defined period and a clear channel to submit a written explanation or supporting documentation. This approach upholds the principles of procedural fairness and due process, which are fundamental to ethical admissions practices. It allows the university to gather all necessary information before making a decision, ensuring that the decision is based on a complete and accurate understanding of the applicant's qualifications and circumstances. This aligns with the implicit regulatory framework governing university admissions, which emphasizes fairness, transparency, and the right to be heard. An incorrect approach that involves immediately rejecting the application based solely on the initial discrepancy fails to uphold the principles of procedural fairness. It assumes guilt without allowing the applicant an opportunity to explain. This could be seen as a violation of ethical standards that require a thorough and unbiased review. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the discrepancy and proceed with the application as if no issue exists, compromises the integrity of the admissions process and the academic standards of Alma Mater Europaea. This would be a failure to adhere to the university's own internal policies and potentially external regulatory expectations regarding due diligence in admissions. A third incorrect approach, which is to contact Mr. Novak informally without a formal process or documentation, lacks transparency and could lead to misunderstandings or perceptions of bias. It does not create a clear record of the interaction or the applicant's response, which is crucial for accountability and auditability. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, identify and document any potential discrepancies. Second, consult relevant university policies and guidelines regarding admissions and applicant verification. Third, formulate a clear and formal communication to the applicant outlining the concerns and requesting a response within a specified time frame. Fourth, review the applicant's response and any supporting documentation thoroughly. Finally, make a decision based on all available information, ensuring it is consistent with university policies and ethical principles. Question 16. The analysis reveals that an applicant for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam has submitted academic transcripts that appear to contain inconsistencies with the self-reported grades on their initial application form. According to the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam's published admission guidelines, all submitted information must be accurate and verifiable. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and compliant course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Request a formal explanation and supporting documentation from the applicant to clarify the inconsistencies before making a decision. Option B. Forward the case to an external investigative body to determine the applicant's intent. Option C. Accept the application as submitted, assuming the initial application form was more accurate than the transcripts. Option D. Immediately disqualify the applicant due to the apparent discrepancy, as accuracy is paramount. The correct answer is D. Immediately disqualify the applicant due to the apparent discrepancy, as accuracy is paramount. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where an applicant for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam has provided information that appears to be inconsistent with their stated academic background. This presents a professional challenge because the integrity of the admissions process relies on accurate self-disclosure and fair evaluation. Misrepresenting qualifications, even if unintentional, can undermine the credibility of the institution and lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, potentially impacting the academic environment and the reputation of Alma Mater Europaea. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for thorough investigation with the principle of fairness to the applicant. The correct approach involves a structured and transparent process of verification and communication. This entails first acknowledging the discrepancy and then initiating a formal request for clarification and supporting documentation from the applicant. This approach upholds the regulatory framework of the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam by adhering to its stated admission policies, which implicitly require truthful representation of academic achievements. Ethically, it aligns with principles of fairness and due process, ensuring the applicant has an opportunity to explain the discrepancy before a final decision is made. This method respects the applicant's right to be heard and allows the admissions committee to make an informed decision based on verified facts. An incorrect approach that involves immediately rejecting the application without seeking clarification fails to uphold the principle of due process. This would be a regulatory failure, as it bypasses the established procedures for handling potential discrepancies, which typically include a review and an opportunity for the applicant to respond. Ethically, it is unfair and potentially discriminatory, as it presumes guilt without investigation. Another incorrect approach, which is to accept the application at face value without addressing the apparent inconsistency, represents a failure to maintain the integrity of the admissions process. This would violate the implicit regulatory requirement for accurate applicant information and could lead to the admission of a candidate who does not meet the established academic standards, thereby compromising the quality of the student body and the institution's reputation. Ethically, it is a dereliction of duty for the admissions committee to overlook potential misrepresentations. A further incorrect approach, such as publicly questioning the applicant's integrity without a formal, private inquiry, would be a significant ethical breach and a potential regulatory violation concerning data privacy and fair treatment. This could lead to reputational damage for both the applicant and the institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Identify the discrepancy or concern. 2. Consult the relevant Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam regulations and admission policies. 3. Initiate a formal, documented request for clarification and evidence from the applicant. 4. Review the applicant's response and supporting documentation objectively. 5. Make a decision based on verified information and in accordance with established procedures. 6. Communicate the decision clearly and professionally to the applicant. Question 17. Benchmark analysis indicates that during the review of an applicant's submitted academic transcripts for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam, a significant discrepancy is noted between the stated grade point average on the application form and the average calculated from the individual course grades listed on the official transcript. The admissions committee is tasked with determining the most appropriate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and uphold the integrity of the admissions process. Option A. Request the applicant to provide a written explanation and any supporting documentation for the discrepancy in their GPA, while temporarily placing the application on hold pending clarification. Option B. Immediately reject the application due to the unverified GPA, citing a failure to provide accurate information. Option C. Proceed with the application review using the GPA stated on the application form, assuming it was a minor administrative error by the applicant. Option D. Adjust the applicant's transcript grades to align with the GPA stated on the application form to facilitate a smoother review process. The correct answer is A. Request the applicant to provide a written explanation and any supporting documentation for the discrepancy in their GPA, while temporarily placing the application on hold pending clarification. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the regulatory framework governing academic admissions at Alma Mater Europaea, specifically concerning the integrity of the application process and the ethical implications of misrepresentation. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate course of action when faced with potentially misleading information, balancing the need for accurate assessment with fairness to the applicant. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's standards and regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves seeking clarification and additional documentation from the applicant regarding the discrepancy in their academic records. This is the most appropriate professional practice because it adheres to the principles of due diligence and fairness mandated by academic regulatory frameworks. By directly addressing the issue with the applicant, the admissions committee upholds transparency and provides an opportunity for the applicant to rectify any unintentional errors or provide context. This aligns with the ethical obligation to make admissions decisions based on accurate and verifiable information, as typically stipulated in university admissions policies and any relevant national or European higher education regulations that Alma Mater Europaea would be bound by. Correct approach is analysis. An approach that involves immediately rejecting the application based on the perceived discrepancy without seeking further information is procedurally flawed and ethically questionable. This fails to acknowledge the possibility of administrative errors or misunderstandings, potentially leading to an unfair outcome and a violation of principles of natural justice often embedded in academic governance. It bypasses the opportunity for clarification, which is a fundamental step in any fair assessment process. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the discrepancy and proceed with the application as if no issue exists. This constitutes a failure in due diligence and regulatory compliance. It compromises the integrity of the admissions process by accepting potentially inaccurate information, which could lead to admitting students who do not meet the required academic standards. This also sets a precedent for laxity in admissions, undermining the university's reputation and potentially violating its own internal policies and any overarching regulatory requirements for academic integrity. Finally, an approach that involves fabricating or altering the applicant's records to fit the admission criteria would be a severe ethical and regulatory breach. This constitutes academic fraud and would have serious legal and professional repercussions for the individuals involved and the institution. It directly violates the core principles of honesty and integrity that underpin all academic and regulatory frameworks. Professional reasoning. Professionals in academic admissions should adopt a systematic approach that prioritizes accuracy, fairness, and adherence to established regulations. This involves 1. Identifying discrepancies or potential issues in application materials. 2. Documenting the identified issue clearly. 3. Initiating a process for seeking clarification from the applicant, providing them with a reasonable opportunity to respond and submit supporting evidence. 4. Evaluating the applicant's response and any new documentation against the established admission criteria and regulatory requirements. 5. Making a final decision based on a complete and accurate understanding of the applicant's qualifications and adherence to all applicable rules. This structured process ensures that decisions are defensible, ethical, and compliant with the regulatory framework. Question 18. To address the challenge of ensuring a fair and compliant admissions process for the Alma Mater Europaea entrance exam, which of the following actions best reflects adherence to the university's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines? Option A. Admitting candidates based on informal endorsements from faculty members, even if their formal application documents are incomplete. Option B. Approving applications with minor documentation errors, assuming these are not critical to the applicant's overall suitability for the program. Option C. Prioritizing the admission of candidates from specific regions to meet institutional diversity targets, even if some fall below the minimum academic threshold. Option D. Systematically verifying that each applicant's submitted materials meet all stated academic prerequisites and documentation requirements as per the official entrance examination guidelines. The correct answer is D. Systematically verifying that each applicant's submitted materials meet all stated academic prerequisites and documentation requirements as per the official entrance examination guidelines. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions. Ensuring that admissions processes are fair, transparent, and comply with internal regulations and ethical standards. The difficulty lies in balancing the desire to admit promising candidates with the need to adhere strictly to established criteria and avoid any perception of bias or preferential treatment. This requires a meticulous approach to document review and decision-making, grounded in the Alma Mater Europaea's specific entrance examination guidelines. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective evaluation of all submitted application materials against the defined criteria outlined in the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance examination regulations. This means systematically verifying that each candidate meets the academic prerequisites, has provided all required documentation, and that their submitted work aligns with the assessment standards. This approach is correct because it directly upholds the principles of fairness, equity, and regulatory compliance mandated by the university. It ensures that decisions are based on merit and adherence to established rules, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the admissions process and the reputation of the institution. An incorrect approach that relies on informal recommendations or personal impressions without rigorous verification fails to meet the regulatory requirements. This is ethically problematic as it introduces subjectivity and potential bias, undermining the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes filling quotas over objective assessment also violates the spirit and letter of the entrance examination regulations, which are designed to select candidates based on their qualifications and potential, not demographic targets or expediency. Finally, an approach that overlooks minor discrepancies in documentation, assuming they are inconsequential, risks setting a precedent for laxity and could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, thereby compromising academic standards and potentially violating specific clauses within the university's admissions framework. Professionals in academic admissions must adopt a systematic, evidence-based decision-making process. This involves 1. Clearly understanding and internalizing all relevant university regulations and guidelines for the entrance examination. 2. Establishing a standardized checklist or rubric for evaluating applications based on these regulations. 3. Conducting objective reviews of all submitted documents, cross-referencing them against the established criteria. 4. Documenting the evaluation process and the rationale for each decision. 5. Seeking clarification or review from a supervisor or committee for any borderline cases or complex issues, ensuring that decisions are defensible and compliant. Question 19. The review process indicates that an applicant for the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance examination may have engaged in plagiarism by submitting work that closely resembles publicly available online content without proper attribution. According to the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance examination regulations, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Consult with external academic integrity experts to determine the severity of the plagiarism before engaging with the applicant. Option B. Reject the application immediately based on the initial suspicion of plagiarism to maintain the integrity of the admissions process. Option C. Focus on the potential negative impact of admitting a student with a plagiarism record on the university's international rankings and consider this factor in the decision. Option D. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged plagiarism, gathering evidence and providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond, in accordance with the university's academic integrity policy. The correct answer is D. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged plagiarism, gathering evidence and providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond, in accordance with the university's academic integrity policy. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential breach of academic integrity by a student applicant. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a delicate balance between upholding the university's standards, ensuring fairness to the applicant, and adhering to the Alma Mater Europaea's specific entrance examination regulations. The admissions committee must act decisively yet equitably, avoiding both undue leniency and overly harsh, unsubstantiated judgments. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented investigation that strictly adheres to the Alma Mater Europaea's stated procedures for handling academic misconduct during the entrance examination. This means gathering all relevant evidence, providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond to the allegations, and making a decision based solely on the evidence and the university's established disciplinary framework. This approach is correct because it ensures due process, transparency, and consistency, thereby upholding the integrity of the admissions process and the university's reputation. It aligns with the fundamental principles of fairness and the specific regulatory framework governing the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance exams, which likely mandates a clear procedure for addressing such issues. An approach that immediately dismisses the application without a formal investigation fails to provide the applicant with due process and may lead to an unfair outcome. This violates the principle of natural justice and the university's own procedural guidelines, which would typically require an opportunity for the applicant to be heard. Another incorrect approach, which involves seeking external opinions without first exhausting internal investigative procedures, risks compromising the confidentiality of the applicant and the integrity of the university's internal decision-making process. It also suggests a lack of confidence in the university's own established protocols. Finally, an approach that focuses on the potential impact on the university's rankings rather than the applicant's conduct disregards the ethical imperative to address academic integrity directly and fairly. Professionals in admissions should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant regulations and policies. This involves identifying the specific nature of the alleged misconduct, gathering all pertinent evidence, documenting every step of the process, and ensuring that the applicant is informed of the allegations and given a fair opportunity to present their case. Decisions should be based on the evidence and the established regulatory framework, not on external pressures or assumptions. Question 20. What factors determine an applicant's eligibility for admission to Alma Mater Europaea, strictly adhering to the university's entrance examination regulatory framework? Option A. Academic qualifications, demonstrated aptitude for the program of study, and successful completion of all examination requirements as stipulated by the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance exam guidelines. Option B. The applicant's existing network of professional contacts and their potential to contribute to the university's alumni relations in the future. Option C. The applicant's alignment with the university's perceived social and political values, as inferred from their personal statements. Option D. The applicant's ability to cover the full tuition fees and living expenses for the duration of their studies. The correct answer is A. Academic qualifications, demonstrated aptitude for the program of study, and successful completion of all examination requirements as stipulated by the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance exam guidelines. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles governing academic admissions, specifically within the context of the Alma Mater Europaea's established regulatory framework for entrance examinations. The challenge lies in discerning which factors are legitimately considered by the admissions committee according to the university's own guidelines, as opposed to extraneous or potentially discriminatory considerations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the applicant's response reflects an awareness of fair and equitable assessment practices. The correct approach involves identifying factors that are directly and explicitly outlined or implied within the Alma Mater Europaea's entrance exam regulations as relevant to assessing an applicant's suitability. This includes academic merit, demonstrated aptitude for the chosen field of study, and adherence to the procedural requirements of the examination itself. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams typically prioritizes objective and verifiable criteria to ensure a transparent and merit-based selection process. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant as it upholds principles of equal opportunity and avoids bias. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the applicant's financial capacity to pay tuition fees is ethically flawed and potentially discriminatory. University admissions are generally based on academic and intellectual merit, not on an applicant's socioeconomic status, unless specific scholarship criteria are being assessed, which is not the primary focus of an entrance exam. Relying on the applicant's perceived social connections or network is also inappropriate and unprofessional. Admissions decisions should be based on objective assessments of the applicant's qualifications and potential, not on subjective judgments about their social standing or potential future influence. Furthermore, considering the applicant's personal opinions on unrelated political matters is irrelevant to their academic suitability and constitutes a breach of professional conduct by introducing non-academic and potentially biased criteria into the evaluation process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a thorough review of the relevant institutional policies and regulatory guidelines governing admissions. Professionals must prioritize objective, merit-based criteria and avoid any consideration of personal characteristics, financial status, or external affiliations that are not explicitly defined as relevant by the governing regulations. A commitment to fairness, transparency, and equal opportunity should guide all assessment and decision-making processes.